I always thought heartbreak would feel like a punch to the gut, sudden, sharp, fast, but when it actually happened it was nothing like that. It was slower. It was almost careful, the way everything broke apart. Like someone deliberately pulling apart every thread of a sweater you didn't even realize was coming undone. The day she left me, I remember every single detail like it's burned into the back of my mind. The smell of rain on the concrete, the creak of the cheap coffee shop door. The way her hands trembled just slightly when she told me the truth. Her name was Emily. We'd been together for 3 years almost to the day. It wasn't some fairy tale, I won't pretend it was, but it was good, or at least I thought it was. We had plans to move in together, plans to maybe get a dog, plans to travel the world someday when we could afford it. She made me believe in a future, something I never really let myself do before. I wasn't the type to dream big, not until her. She cracked open that part of me. And then there was Caleb, my best friend since we were kids. We grew up 3 blocks away from each other, rode the same rusty bikes down the same broken sidewalks, made the same stupid mistakes. He was the guy I called when my mom got sick, the one I drank with the night my dad left. I trusted him with everything, everything. So when Emily sat across from me, biting her lip the way she always did when she was nervous, I didn't see it coming. Not even a little. I thought maybe she was going to tell me she got a new job or that she wanted to move to a bigger place. I thought anything but this. "I have to tell you something," she said, voice barely above a whisper. I leaned in, not because I couldn't hear her, but because I felt this sudden need to be closer to protect whatever fragile thing was happening between us. But I couldn't protect it. "It's Caleb," she said. She couldn't even look at me. Her fingers twisted the paper napkin on the table into tighter and tighter knots. Something happened. For a second my brain didn't even compute the words. Caleb, our Caleb, my Caleb. I blinked at her like maybe I'd misheard, like maybe this was some awful joke, a prank that would leave us all laughing and shaking our heads later. But she didn't laugh. Her eyes filled with tears, and suddenly everything clicked into place. The late nights she said she was working late, the way he stopped answering my texts, the way she flinched sometimes when I touched her. I saw it all in one horrible rush. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. I just stared at her, feeling like I was watching my life from somewhere outside myself. She kept talking, words tumbling out in this frantic, broken way. She said it just happened, that she didn't mean for it to, that it started with one night where they were both lonely and vulnerable. She said it wasn't planned. She said she still loved me, but she loved him too. She said she didn't know what to do. I remember thinking how strange it was that I felt so calm, too calm, like my body had shut off the panic to keep me from falling apart right there in the middle of the coffee shop. I nodded, I stood up, I left. I don't even remember walking home. I just remember the rain starting, so hard and fast it soaked me to the bone, but I didn't even care. When I got back to my apartment, I sat on the floor in the dark for hours. No TV, no music, just me and the unbearable silence. I should have cried, I should have screamed, I should have broken something, but I didn't. I just sat there empty, like someone had scooped all the insides out of me and left a hollow shell behind. It wasn't until the next morning, when the sun broke through the blinds and lit up the apartment in this sickly yellow glow, that the anger came. Hot and sharp and blinding. They didn't just betray me. They chose each other over me. The 2 people I loved most in the world had made a decision, one night at a time, to tear me apart. And that's when I knew I couldn't just sit here and let them get away with it. They thought they'd broken me. They thought I'd disappear quietly, maybe nurse my wounds in private and move on like it never happened. But they didn't know me as well as they thought. I was going to make one move they would never see coming. The thing about betrayal is that it doesn't just hurt, it reshapes you. I woke up that second morning feeling like a different person altogether. It wasn't sadness anymore. It wasn't even anger, not exactly. It was something colder, something heavier. I didn't want revenge in the way you see it in movies, with big dramatic confrontations or shouting matches in the rain. No, I wanted something quieter, something that would hit them where it hurt most, and I knew exactly how to do it. See, when you know someone inside and out, when you know their hopes, their dreams, their secrets, you hold all the cards. And Caleb and Emily, they'd spent years telling me everything. I knew their fears better than they did. I knew exactly how to twist the knife without ever raising my voice. All it would take was patience, precision, and a little bit of planning. I spent that morning sitting at my kitchen table, a blank sheet of paper in front of me, the steam from my coffee curling into the air like smoke signals. I didn't even touch the coffee. I just sat there, staring at the page, letting ideas flow through my mind. Part of me hated myself for even thinking about it. Part of me wondered what it said about me that my first instinct wasn't to just walk away and heal, but to plot. But that part of me was small. The bigger part, the wounded, howling part, was louder. It reminded me that they chose this, that they didn't care what it would do to me. The first thing I had to do was learn everything I could about what was happening between them. Were they just hooking up? Was it serious? Were they already planning a future together? I couldn't launch anything without knowing the full story, so I did something I never thought I'd do. I started watching. carefully, from a distance. Caleb's social media was a goldmine. He'd never been good at keeping things private. He posted everything: what he ate, where he went, what he was thinking. At first there was nothing, just his usual dumb memes and workout selfies. But then little things started to change. Vague posts about being the happiest he'd ever been. Pictures of mystery dinners that I knew weren't so mysterious at all. And Emily's profile, silent, dead silent, like she had gone into hiding. I knew Caleb well enough to know that silence from Emily was part of their plan. She was the cautious one. She wouldn't want people to find out yet, especially not me. They probably told themselves they were protecting me, sparing me. That made me laugh bitterly, as if they hadn't already crushed me under the weight of their choices. The next step was even harder. I had to see them together, really see them. I needed confirmation with my own eyes, something that would strip away even the tiniest shred of doubt I still had left. So that Saturday I pulled on a baseball cap, the most generic hoodie I owned, and went out. I knew where they liked to go, the little bar downtown with the old pool tables and the jukebox that never worked right. It was where we'd all hung out back when things were simpler. Back when I believed in things like loyalty. I sat in my car across the street pretending to scroll through my phone, heart pounding so hard I thought it might crack my ribs. Every time the door opened, every time someone laughed, I flinched. Minutes crawled by like hours. I almost gave up. Almost told myself to go home, forget it, pretend it never happened. And then they walked in. Hand in hand. Like it was the most natural thing in the world. I couldn't breathe for a second, couldn't think. It was one thing to hear it, another to see it. Her laughing at something he whispered in her ear. Him brushing her hair back from her face the way I used to. It felt like someone had plunged a knife straight into my chest and twisted it. But strangely, the pain only lasted a moment. After that, a kind of numbness settled over me. A clarity. I wasn't going to cry anymore. I wasn't going to wonder why anymore. That chapter was closed, dead. Now it was about the next move. They thought they had won, that they had built something beautiful out of the wreckage they left behind. But they had no idea what was coming. I started the car, drove away without looking back. I already knew exactly what I had to do. And it would be so much worse than anything they could ever imagine. The real power in life, I realized, doesn't come from shouting the loudest or swinging the hardest. It comes from being patient, from knowing exactly when to move and when to wait. And if there's one thing heartbreak had taught me already, it was how to wait. The days that followed felt endless, but I made myself sit through them. I spent every minute carefully putting things into place. It was like setting a trap, slow, delicate, deliberate. First, I needed a way to get close again without raising suspicion. I knew Caleb and Emily would be careful around me if they thought I was angry. They'd put up walls, they'd cut me out. So instead, I did the last thing they would expect. I apologized. It took everything in me to send that first text. Just seeing Caleb's name pop up on my phone made my stomach twist, but I forced myself to do it. Hey man, been thinking I overreacted. You and Emily, I get it. Hope there's no hard feelings. I stared at it for a long time before hitting send. My thumb hovered over the screen like it weighed 100 pounds. Finally, I pressed it and tossed the phone across the couch like it might burn me. Then I waited. 10 minutes passed, then 15. And just when I thought maybe he wasn't going to respond at all, my phone buzzed. Bro, I wasn't expecting that. Thanks means a lot. Short, hesitant, guilty, good. It meant he still cared what I thought. Somewhere deep down, it meant I still had a way in. We messaged back and forth a few times over the next few days. Stiff at first, like two strangers trying to remember how to be friends. He told me they wanted to be honest with me from the start but were scared. Said he hoped one day I could understand. I played it cool, said I needed time but I didn't want to lose him as a friend. I could almost feel his relief through the phone. Hook, line, sinker. Within a week, Caleb was inviting me out for drinks again, just like old times. He even suggested a guys' night. No Emily, no drama. I agreed instantly, but not because I missed him. No, this was about seeing him up close, watching, waiting, gathering every little crack in his new life, every weakness. At the bar, Caleb was different. He laughed louder, drank more, like he was trying to prove he was happy. But there was this tightness around his eyes he couldn't hide, guilt, maybe even fear. I listened as he talked about his new job, how he and Emily were thinking of moving in together, how things were finally falling into place. I nodded, smiled, clinked glasses with him, played the part perfectly. Inside, I was taking notes. I found out they were apartment hunting, found out Emily still hadn't told her parents about them yet. Found out Caleb had money problems he was trying to hide. Little things, things that didn't mean much on their own, but together, they were the seeds of something much bigger. After that night, I started setting the second part of the plan into motion. I knew Emily's weaknesses too. She hated chaos, she hated being judged. Her worst fear was people thinking she was a bad person, and Caleb, he crumbled under pressure. One bad week and he started making stupid decisions, dangerous ones. All I had to do was nudge things a little, not enough to be obvious, just enough to loosen the foundation they were so desperately trying to build. I started small. Anonymous tips to Emily's job suggesting she was involved in some inappropriate relationship drama. Nothing that could get her fired, just enough to get her called into an awkward meeting with HR. Then I casually let it slip to a mutual friend, someone who loved gossip, that Emily had left me for Caleb, making sure the story sounded even worse than it was. The kind of rumor that would travel fast and stain everything it touched. I didn't have to do much else. The world has a way of finishing the job once you give it a little push. By the end of the month, Emily was stressed out, jumpy. Caleb was defensive, snapping at friends. Cracks were starting to show. They were arguing more, trusting each other less, second-guessing everything. And I hadn't even made my real move yet. That was still coming. Something so perfect, so devastating, they'd never even see it until it was too late. And the best part, they still thought I was their friend. It's funny how little it takes to ruin something when it's already standing on shaky ground. I didn't have to launch some grand master plan. I didn't have to scream or fight or drag their names through the dirt. I just had to tap at the weak spots lightly, like knocking on glass you already know is cracked. Eventually it was going to shatter under its own weight. All I had to do was be patient, and patience was something I had mastered. I kept things normal on the surface. Friendly texts here and there, the occasional hangout, always smiling, always understanding. I let them believe I had moved on, that I was happy for them. That was the key. They needed to think they were safe. Only then would they drop their guard enough for the real damage to sink in. It started small. One night we were all out together, me, Caleb, Emily, and a couple of our old friends. Caleb was drinking heavier than usual, loud and clumsy, trying too hard to be the life of the party. Emily kept shooting him these tight, strained smiles like she was trying to hold everything together with sheer willpower. I leaned over to her when Caleb stumbled off to the bar and said, just low enough for only her to hear, "You okay? You seem stressed." Just those few words, no judgment, no accusation, just concern. But I saw it land. I saw her shoulders stiffen. I saw the flash of panic she tried to cover up with a laugh. Later that night, as we were leaving, I caught up with Caleb while Emily was talking to a friend. He was still tipsy, slurring a little. I clapped him on the shoulder and joked, "Man, you better lock that down before she realizes what she gave up." Another seed dropped casually into the soil of his insecurities. And he laughed, but it was a hollow, nervous kind of laugh. Over the next few weeks it just got worse. Their arguments became public. Friends started to notice. Caleb got paranoid, thinking Emily was embarrassed of him. Emily got defensive, accusing Caleb of not taking their future seriously enough. Every small insecurity they had I fed little by little. A word here, a look there, always invisible, always deniable. And yet, part of me hated myself every time I did it. There were nights I lay awake staring at the ceiling, wondering when I had become this person. Wondering if Caleb and Emily had simply brought out the worst in me, or if this darkness had always been there, waiting for an excuse. But every time I thought about stopping, I remembered the way Emily looked when she first told me. The way Caleb avoided my eyes the night it all fell apart. The way they had laughed together at that bar while I sat alone in my car, bleeding from a wound they had carved without mercy. No. They deserved this. Every second of it. The final blow came almost by accident. I hadn't even planned it, not exactly. I was just talking to another mutual friend, Jess, one evening, someone who had been suspicious about Emily and Caleb from the start. Jess had always been protective of me, the kind of friend who held grudges so I didn't have to. We were sitting outside a coffee shop, the air crisp and heavy with the smell of rain, and she said, "It's just messed up, you know, the way they acted like you didn't matter." Something in me cracked open then. I didn't even mean to, but the words tumbled out. "Yeah," I said quietly, "especially after everything I covered for them." Jess frowned. "What do you mean?" I hesitated just long enough, created just enough space for doubt to grow. "Nothing," I said, shaking my head. I shouldn't have said anything. But the damage was already done. Jess leaned in, hungry for more. I let her pull it out of me piece by piece, all half-truths and loaded silences. I never outright said Caleb had cheated on Emily too, but I let Jess believe it, let her run wild with it. Within 48 hours, the rumor was everywhere. By the end of the week, Emily wasn't just fighting with Caleb, she was questioning the entire foundation of what they had. Caleb was furious, defensive, desperate. Friends took sides, secrets spilled, trust snapped like a brittle twig. And me. I stayed quiet, smiling politely, offering support when they came crying to me. The perfect friend. Until finally, after a screaming match outside that same old bar where I first saw them together, Emily stormed off in tears and Caleb sat slumped on the curb, head in his hands, alone. And that's when I knew. I had won. But standing there watching him, broken and abandoned, I realized something even darker. Winning didn't feel the way I thought it would. Not even close. For days after that night, I expected to feel something different. Maybe relief, maybe pride, something. I had spent weeks building toward this moment, setting every piece into place, watching it all crumble exactly the way I planned. I should have felt powerful. I should have felt free. But the truth is, all I felt was tired. It was a kind of exhaustion that went beyond my body, something deeper, something in my bones. I would wake up every morning with this heavy weight sitting on my chest, dragging me down before I even made it out of bed. The silence in my apartment was louder than ever now. No buzzing phone, no messages from Caleb asking if I wanted to hang out, no late-night calls from Emily when she couldn't sleep, just nothing. It turns out when you burn everything to the ground, you don't just destroy the people who hurt you. You destroy yourself a little too. The first few days after their blow-up, Caleb tried reaching out. At first, it was short, desperate texts. I don't know what happened, man, everything's falling apart. I need to talk, please. I didn't answer. I couldn't, not because I didn't want to, but because I didn't know who I was supposed to be anymore. Was I still his friend? Was I the guy who helped tear his life down and then smiled about it? Every time the phone buzzed, a fresh wave of guilt would hit me like a punch to the gut. Eventually, the texts stopped coming. Emily never reached out at all. I guess I couldn't blame her. She had always been the more self-contained one. When things fell apart, she retreated, shut the world out, disappeared behind her walls. I imagined her packing up her life in silence, moving somewhere new where the weight of what happened wouldn't follow her around like a shadow. I thought maybe that would be the end of it, that eventually life would settle back into some kind of normal. But it didn't. Instead, I found myself haunted by everything I'd done. Not in a big dramatic way, not in nightmares or breakdowns. No, it was quieter than that. It was the way I couldn't look at myself in the mirror without flinching. It was the way certain songs made my stomach turn because they reminded me of nights laughing with Caleb and Emily, back when everything felt real. It was the way I stopped answering texts from other friends, too afraid they'd see what I had become if they looked too closely. There's this saying that revenge is like drinking poison and waiting for the other person to die. I never really understood it before. But now I lived it. One night, maybe 2 weeks after it all blew up, I found myself sitting alone in that same coffee shop where Emily had first told me about Caleb. I hadn't even planned to come. My feet just carried me there like some part of me was searching for answers it knew it wouldn't find. I sat at the same table, ordered the same black coffee, watched the rain streak down the windows. Around me, life went on. Couples laughed quietly in their booths. Someone tapped away on a laptop, earbuds in. 2 girls behind me whispered excitedly about some new guy they liked. The world didn't stop for heartbreak. It didn't even blink. I pulled out my phone almost without thinking and scrolled back through old pictures. Caleb grinning at me with a beer in hand. Emily wrapped around me at a New Year's party, cheeks flushed with laughter. The 3 of us packed into a tiny photo booth, faces squished together, eyes bright with a kind of innocence we didn't even realize we had. And for the first time since it all started, I let myself cry. Not the angry, bitter tears I expected. No, these were quieter, sadder, the kind of tears you cry when you realize you can never go back. That some doors once closed are sealed forever. I don't know how long I sat there, long enough that the waitress started giving me sympathetic glances, long enough that my coffee went cold and untouched in front of me. Eventually, I wiped my face, stood up, and left without saying a word. As I walked home through the empty streets, one thought looped over and over in my mind, so loud I couldn't escape it. What have I done? Because in the end, I hadn't just lost Emily. I hadn't just lost Caleb. I had lost the version of myself that could have forgiven them. The version that still believed in loyalty and friendship and love. And standing there under the dim, flickering streetlights, I finally understood. No amount of revenge could ever bring him back. The thing about anger is that it burns hot and fast, but guilt lingers. It soaks into your skin. It sits with you in the quiet moments, whispering in your ear when you think you're finally starting to breathe again. I thought after everything collapsed, I'd finally feel free. I thought maybe I could start fresh. But instead, it felt like I was dragging a broken version of myself everywhere I went, like a shadow I couldn't shake. The weeks after Caleb and Emily fell apart blurred together. Days bled into nights. I stopped going out. I stopped answering the few friends who still tried reaching out. I even started skipping work, faking sick, letting the world shrink smaller and smaller around me. At first, it felt like survival, like I just needed a little time to catch my breath. But after a while, I realized I wasn't healing, I was hiding. And hiding never fixes anything. One evening, after too many beers and too much sitting alone in the dark, I finally picked up my phone again. I didn't really know what I was doing. I just opened the contacts list and let my thumb hover over names, flipping through memories like old photographs. Some I couldn't even look at. Some felt like they belonged to another lifetime. And then I landed on Caleb's name. I stared at it for a long time. Long enough that the screen dimmed and locked itself, forcing me to tap it awake again. Part of me wanted to call him, to apologize even though he didn't know what I had done, to explain even though there was no good explanation. Another part of me knew it wouldn't change anything. Even if I confessed everything, even if he somehow forgave me, it wouldn't undo what had happened. It wouldn't unbreak us. I ended up typing a text instead, just 3 words, "I'm sorry, man." I stared at it, thumb hovering over the send button. Then slowly, deliberately, I deleted it. Some things are better left unsaid. Instead, I forced myself to do something I hadn't done in months. I left the apartment. It was late, almost midnight, but the air outside was cool and sharp, and for the first time in a long time I felt something other than numbness. I walked with no real destination, just letting the streets guide me. Past the bar where we used to hang out. Past the park where we used to sit on lazy summer nights planning futures that would never happen. Every corner was haunted by ghosts of the life I used to have. Eventually, I found myself by the river. The water was dark and slow, reflecting the scattered city lights in broken patterns. I leaned against the railing and just stood there, breathing, watching, trying to feel something that didn't hurt. I thought about Emily, about Caleb, about all the memories that used to feel warm and full of laughter now twisted into something bitter and hollow. I wondered where they were now, if they were okay, if they hated me or missed me, or if I was just another scar they carried around without looking at too closely. Mostly, I wondered if they had any idea how badly I had needed them back then. How much losing them had cracked something deep inside me. I don't know how long I stood there, long enough that my fingers went numb from the cold. Long enough that the city around me started to go quiet, like even the night was running out of energy. At some point, I realized that if I didn't do something, if I didn't find a way to move forward, I was going to stay stuck in this moment forever. Angry, guilty, alone. That wasn't the person I wanted to be. Not anymore. So I made myself a promise, right there by the river. I wouldn't let this be the end of me. I didn't know how to forgive them yet. Hell, I didn't even know how to forgive myself. But I could start by trying to be someone better than the guy who plotted his friend's downfall out of spite. Maybe that meant reaching out to old friends. Maybe that meant therapy. Maybe that meant leaving this city behind and starting over somewhere nobody knew my name. I didn't have all the answers yet, I barely had any. But for the first time in what felt like forever, I had a tiny spark of something. Not hope exactly, not yet. But maybe the beginning of it. And for now, that was enough. I turned away from the river, pulled my hood up against the cold, and started walking back toward whatever future was waiting for me. One small step at a time. Moving on isn't a single moment. It's not like flipping a switch or waking up one morning and feeling brand new. It's slow, painfully slow. Some days you feel like you're climbing out of a dark hole. Other days it feels like you're slipping right back down. But if you keep going, if you keep trying, you realize one day that the darkness isn't swallowing you up anymore, that somehow, without even noticing, you've made it to the surface. For me, it started with little things. Cleaning my apartment. Answering texts from friends I had ignored. Taking long walks without checking over my shoulder, half expecting to see ghosts. I didn't talk about Emily and Caleb, not at first. When people asked, I just shrugged and said life moved on. Part of me thought about telling the truth, the whole messy, ugly truth, but I stopped myself every time. Maybe because saying it out loud would make it all real again, maybe because deep down I knew it wouldn't make me feel better. Some nights were still hard. Some memories still cut like broken glass. But they didn't control me anymore. I even started going back to places I used to avoid. The coffee shop, the river, the old bar. At first, it felt like walking into a graveyard full of things I had buried but hadn't properly mourned. But the more I faced them, the less power they had over me. They were just places, just moments frozen in time. I learned to forgive in pieces, not all at once, not completely. First, I forgave myself for loving them. Then for trusting them. Eventually, for hurting them back. I realized something important. They didn't betray me because I wasn't enough. They betrayed me because they were broken too, in their own ways. Hurt people, it's not an excuse but it's the truth. And me. I had a choice. Stay bitter. Stay stuck. Or let it go. I started focusing on myself again. I picked up hobbies I had forgotten about. I started running, nothing crazy, just a few miles here and there, pounding my frustration into the pavement until my chest burned and my legs ached. I started reading again, falling into other people's stories when my own felt too heavy. I even started saving for a trip, somewhere far away, somewhere no one knew my name. I didn't know if I'd actually go, but it felt good to have something to hope for again. Something that belonged to me. As for Caleb and Emily, I heard bits and pieces about them now and then. From friends, from the occasional social media post that slipped through. They didn't get back together, not really. Whatever they had built had crumbled too fast, too messily to be put back together. Maybe they still talked sometimes, maybe they didn't. It didn't matter anymore. They weren't my story now. I was. There's a kind of peace that comes with letting go, not forgetting, not pretending it didn't happen, but accepting that some things just aren't meant to be fixed. Some wounds stay tender even after they heal. Some lessons come at a price you never wanted to pay. But surviving it, growing past it, that's the real victory. One night, months after it all, I found myself walking by the river again. The air was crisp, the city lights reflecting off the water in a soft, broken shimmer. I leaned against the railing, breathing it in. The pain wasn't gone, not completely, but it didn't own me anymore. I smiled to myself, a small, quiet smile. The kind that comes from knowing you made it through something that could have destroyed you. I pulled out my phone, snapped a picture of the river and saved it, not to post, not to send to anyone. Just for me. A reminder. Of what I lost. Of what I found. Of who I had become. I wasn't the same person I was before they broke me. But maybe that wasn't a bad thing. Maybe the version of me that survived was stronger, wiser, more real. And maybe, just maybe, the best parts of my story were still unwritten. I slipped my phone back into my pocket, took a deep breath and kept walking forward. No more looking back. Not anymore.